Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense. But the real universe is always one step beyond logic. From The Sayings of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. Welcome to Reading Dune, a podcast where we read Dune by Frank Herbert and talk about it. If you're a Fremen or a first-time reader, this podcast is for you. My name is Caleb Pauls.
And I'm Evan Diaz.
And together, we are going to read some Dune.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, there we go. Evan, how are you doing?
Good. Obviously, I'm a little late, laggy here, but our fans know how it goes.
Oh gosh, I just don't want to be known as the lag people, like the Dune podcast that lags. I try to fix that in post for the actual podcast, but it's hard sometimes.
We got to do what we can when we live on a planet with very little water. / Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's so / Wi-Fi. That's it. Dun 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 dun. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we talk about fans, somebody who's reading the show, somebody of our tribe, their favorite part of Dune. And so you can send in your favorite parts of Dune to us via our email, readingdune@gmail.com. You can do a regular old email like I have on my telephone here, or you can like send in an audio or a video clip and we'll play it, and it's all that cool stuff. readingdune@gmail.com, your favorite moment. All right. This email is from Troya. She says, or he says, I don't know. Gender's hard at this point. Hey, Caleb and Evan. I love the show, and I'm trying to tune in more for the live stream on YouTube Thursday nights when I get off work. Troya, I hope you're here. I finished Dune last week, so I might be ahead of where you guys are in the show. But her favorite moments. 1, I cannot get it out of my head after the dinner party chapter. Paul's parable about the drowning fisherman. Do you remember this one, Evan?
Yes. No.
He said no. The parable where the fishermen are climbing over each other's shoulders just to get to the surface and not drowned. It's like climbing on top of each other.
Yes.
Troy says, is it just me, or is this summarize the way the Harkonnens do just about everything?
Each.
The second point is that water is obviously super precious to the Fremen, so I couldn't help but be surprised that they drank coffee. I imagine it would be a delicacy, but when they mentioned it as the Fremen to be a common thing, it was crazy. Anyway, keep being spicy, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas. They sent us this in Christmas, and I'm reading it now here in March. So thank you for sending in your emails. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, spice coffee. We're going to learn more about that. It's going to pop up, not in this chapter, but in I think a couple of chapters to come here. We're going to learn all about how spice coffee works.
Good to know. I tried to make spicy coffee this week, and it went okay. I'm still working with the recipe.
What'd you do?
I added like cinnamon, turmeric, ginger, black pepper, a very specific mixture of those into my coffee. It was pretty dope. It was pretty good, but I want it to be like real, you know?
You need that extra cinnamon in there to get that big hit you right in the face with it.
Oh, yeah.
I picked this quote, though, for this chapter because it really does that parable of in the dinner party where they talk about the fishermen trying to survive by like standing on top of each other in order to survive. That they'll it's not about both of them surviving. It's about one of them surviving by killing the other just to survive. And I do think that like it's a great example of how the Harkonnens work. It's just funny that Paul said it.
Right.
So yes. Now, okay. So now I want to get into this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes in the book because I feel like it's so apropos and it applies to my life, probably your life too, Evan. Probably more likely than we like to think.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to read me that quote?
Yeah, sure. Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need universe that makes sense. But in the real universe, but the real universe is always one step beyond. Here's what I would how I would translate that quote to like make sense nowadays. They don't think it be like it is, but it do.
Real.
Right?
Yeah, that's yes, that's it. As much as we want to like put the universe into a nice little boxes and say this is how it all works, somehow it's always one step ahead of us. And you can't quite plan your way out of it.
That's so real, unfortunately.
Yes. The universe has a mind of its own, and it's always just one step beyond what you think makes sense.
Like the smartest people in society are trying to figure out like all these really intricate, crazy things about like physics, and they get to like where they think this big conclusion is going to happen, and they're like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. That's like the whole scientific problem with the world right now.
I'll deep on this thing here. All right, let's dive into the chapter. We've spent 7 minutes here. Bum. I want to do a shout out real quick to everybody who is watching for the first time on YouTube. Woo! We appreciate it.
Proud of you.
It's good. Yeah, you went this whole way with us. We're so excited that you're here. Thank you so much. Evan just did a little cheers to you. Here it is. All right. So, Evan, where are we in this chapter?
We're still on freaking Giedi Prime, Caleb. Oh, I was so mad when I read. Whoa, that quote is sick. And then I read the thing. I sat across from many rulers of great houses, but never one more gross and dangerous. Dang it, we're still talking about Baron Harkonnen. I was like livid. I even like commented in the Discord how mad I was about the fact that we're still on Giedi Prime.
We're still here. But now we're talking to the great Thufir Hawat, the Mentat assassin. The previous Mentat who served the Atreides, who is now in servitude to the Harkonnens. And this is where we get Hawat's plan. He has an idea that he's working through, and he wants to see how it's going to plan out with the Baron. But the funny thing about Hawat's plan is I suspect that somebody else is executing this plan better than he is. Or better than the Baron, though. So the Baron starts off and says, "You may speak plainly with me, Hawat." He leans back into his chair, his eyes sunk into the folds of fat, and they were just boring into Thufir Hawat, who's sitting across from him in this table. And Thufir thinks to himself, "I've sat across from many rulers of great houses, but never seen a more gross and dangerous pig than this one." There it is. And he thinks how, oh my gosh, that if the universe got rid of this guy, it would be a better place. The Baron continues. Because the Hawat has this thing about Salusa Secundus and Arrakis. He sees a correlation here, and the Baron wants to know what's happening. "Well," the Baron said, "I wish to know how Arrakis figures into your suspicions about Salusa Secundus. It's not enough for me to say the Emperor is be about some associations between Arrakis and his prison planet. So evidently, Thufir decided they needed to send a message to Raban about Arrakis, and we never get exactly what the message says, but I think it has something to do with warning Raban that the Emperor is very closely watching.
Right.
And he needs to do something. And they paid a hefty price to get this message there. And this time the Baron is just talking, and Hawat is thinking to himself, oh, how this Baron babbles too much. Unlike Leto, who could tell Hawat a thing with the raise of an eyebrow, or the old Duke before him, who could express an entire sentence with just one word. This Baron is just talking. Nonsense talking. How it would be doing a service to man. Yeah. And how it thinks how it would be a service to humankind if this Baron was destroyed. Oh gosh. I think, Evan, you agree with that sentence more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's
kind of grim, but
yeah. So the Baron presses the Mentat more. He says, you will not leave here until I've had a full and complete explanation. Hawat, who's been staring at this table the whole time, trying not to look at the Baron, because I'm sure looking at it is difficult. So he looks up at the Baron and he says, you speak too casually of the Lusa Secundus. The Baron gets outraged. Lusa Secundus is the Emperor's most oppressive place, and the Emperor does not permit any of the great houses to know what happens on there. Plus, the odds of making it off the prison planet is very slim. Mortality rate is very high. Hawat then notes how all curiosity about Secundus is discouraged. But Hawat puts the pieces together and asks the Baron if he wonders where the Emperor gets his Sardaukar. So it's kind of it's an unknown thing where the Sardaukar come from. And everyone's not encouraged to ask. They're discouraged to ask questions.
I thought everyone
so the Baron's,
knew.
I thought so too, but evidently everything, it's like hush hush. The Emperor has Sardaukar, but no one kind of okay. But the Baron speculates that the Emperor recruited Sardaukar.
Right.
But that, the Sardaukar are just a normal fighting force. Like the Baron says, sure, they're hardcore, but he doesn't know, the Emperor doesn't know what happens in my dungeons, right? The Harkonnen fighting force is just as capable as the Emperor's, right? There's a little bit of pride in there. And this makes Hawat just snarl back. The Harkonnen legions are a pack of holiday excursionists in comparison to the Sardaukar.
Burn!
He says, you think, I don't know why the Emperor turned, he asked him, do you know why the Emperor turned against House Atreides? And the Baron kind of scowls a little bit, says, this is not in the realm of your speculation. Hawat shoots back. Any area is open to my speculation. That's what you've hired me to do. I'm a Mentat. You do not withhold information or computation lines from Mentat. The Baron just stares. The Baron just stares down at Hawat for a long minute before the Baron spoke. Say what you must, Mentat. So Hawat starts explaining why he thinks the Emperor attacks the Atreides with the Harkonnens. So he thinks that the Padishah Emperor turned against House Atreides because of the Duke's War Masters, Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho, were training a fighting force to within a hair as good as a Sardaukar. And the Duke was in a position to enlarge his force, to make it every bit as strong as the Emperor's. So this is what Hawat thinks. So even on Caladan, with Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho, their fighting force was as good, or almost as good, as the Sardaukar. which is a bold statement. And now, if they were to go to Arrakis, which is a hardened place, if they could teach the people that have been hardened that way, the way of fighting from Gurney, Halleck, and Duncan, Idaho, that force would be better than the Sardaukar. But just as a question, Evan, who's the Duke of Arrakis right now? As we speak.
Raban?
No, think about it. Who's really the Duke?
Oh, Paul.
Paul is. And who trained Paul in how to fight?
Duncan, Idaho, Thufir Hawat, and Gurney Halleck.
Uh-huh. And who's he going to train now, though? In his fighting ways, in his weirding ways?
The Fremen.
So little do we know.
What? It's happening.
It's already happening. I think this was what the Duke Leto was trying to do from the beginning, right? Send Duncan, Idaho out, try to bring the Fremen in, say we're good relations, but he never got very far in his plan before the attack on Arrakeen happened. So here we are 2 years later, and we don't know what Paul is doing at the moment. We still don't know 2 years later. So hearing all of this, the Baron asks, what does this have to do with Arrakis? And Hawat says that Arrakis could provide a pool of recruits who are already conditioned to the bitterest survival training. The Baron shook his head. You cannot mean the Fremen? Hawat says, I mean the Fremen. And Baron laughs at him. Ha! Then why warn Raban? There can't be more than a handful of Fremen left after the Sardaukar raids and Raban's ruthless oppression. Hawat just stares blankly at the Baron. Like, you're not putting the pieces together. The Baron then repeats himself. Not more than a handful. Raban killed 6,000 in the last year alone. Hawat just stares blankly back at him. And the year before, 9,000. And before they left Sardaukar, have counted 20,000 dead Fremen. Hawat continues to stare, but then asks a single question. What have been Raban's troop losses for the past 2 years? So sure, you've killed all of these Fremen, but how many men have you lost? The Baron rubs his large hands on his multiple chins. I like imagine he's got like 17 chins. Just huge. And the Baron starts talking out loud. He starts doing some calculations in his head. And then Hawat interjects. Well, say we lost 30,000. The Baron says, that's a little high, don't you think? Hawat rebuttals. Quite the contrary. You could read in between the lines of Raban's report just as I can. Baron to get angry. Arrakis is a fierce planet. The storm losses. The Mentat interjects. We both know the figure of storm losses. And we both know the transportation manifest of Sardaukar leaving Arrakis. If they did kill 20,000, they lost 5-1 number of men.
Right.
Why won't you face these figures, Baron? You understand what they mean? The Baron's face grew dark and cold. So, Evan, what does this mean? What do those figures mean? What's it going on?
He basically logicked his way into explaining to the Baron that there are more Fremen than the Baron thinks there are, and that he's been stupid because it's been in front of his face this whole time, and he should have known that there's way more Fremen than he's expecting there to be. And it's a huge mistake to underestimate the Fremen, basically, right?
Yes. Also, the Fremen are very good at killing people.
Right. Exactly. They're just yes, because it's at some point he even says the ones that we killed were the weak ones, so the strong ones are somewhere getting stronger.
Right. Evolution is happening because we're killing off all the weak ones.
Right.
What's that supposed to mean? So the Baron spoke coldly. calculated, with almost a measured cadence. This is your job, Mentat. You tell me. So Hawat begins. He begins his little spiel again. I gave you Duncan, Idaho's head count of the Sietch he visited. It all fits. They have 250 of such communities. Their population would be 5 million, by my estimate, that they have maybe twice that spread across the planet. The Baron's jowls quivered. 10 million? At least, Hawat says. The Baron pursed his lips, staring unwavering at the old Atreides Mentat, which he now controlled. And then Howard continues. We haven't even cut heavily into their birth rate yet. We've only helped them by weeding out some of the least successful specimens, leaving them only to grow stronger and stronger, just like on Salusa Secundus. The Baron still doesn't get it.
Do we know how big Arrakis is?
How big is Arrakis? Let's see. I don't know. I think it's a small planet. I don't think it's a really big planet.
Okay. Cool.
Because on all the maps I've seen, like they only show us the North Pole, and it goes. I imagine it goes to like the one of the meridian lines. So there's probably the whole southern region we don't actually have. I'm sure there's like a exact measurement. I don't have it off the top of my head at the moment, but I don't think it's a huge bit.
Gotcha.
Just the only thing big on the planet is worms and the amount of spice.
Yeah.
So the Baron still doesn't see the correlation between Arrakis and Secundus. And so he says, so Howat then tries to explain more. A man who survives on Sosa Secundus starts out by being tougher than everybody else. And then you add the best military training of anybody. And the Baron says, then Howat continues. This is how the Emperor's prison planet works in general. He sends people there, and the ones that are strongest survive, just like on Arrakis. And then the Baron just goes berserk. It's nonsense. By your argument, I could recruit from among the Fremen after the way they've been oppressed by my nephew. And then he gets it. The Baron falls silent, his eyes searching inwardly, thinking, had Raban unwittingly give House Harkonnen its ultimate weapon? Like, could the Harkonnens use the Fremen?
Maybe.
The Baron, maybe, right? So now Howard's like, all right, that's what I want you to get. The Fremen are the key. And that's what, Thufir had been telling Duke Leto. The Fremen are the key. So the Baron then asks Howard, how could you be so sure to trust the loyalty of such recruits? How do we trust the Fremen? So then Howard then explains a very simple way to get their trust. He would take small groups of Fremen and then fill them with a mystique that their planet had been a secret training ground to produce superior beings. And such superior beings could earn a rich living, beautiful women, fine mansions, whatever they desired. The Baron started to nod. Ah, the way the Sardaukar live at home. And then the recruits would then come to believe that such a place as Salusa Secundus is justified because it produced them as an elite fighting force. So my question is, Evan, are the Fremen already doing this to themselves?
Yeah. Yes. Because they're kind of in the struggle, knowing that generations ahead of them will have like something beautiful. It's like, it's similar. It seems much more I don't know, like virtuous the way the Fremen talk about it. It's about generations ahead of them and the planet becoming a paradise. It's not about like fighting and power and all that kind of junk. But yeah,
There's a quote from Muad'Dib later on. I think it's one of Princess Irulan's quotes, but it's the idea that God created Arrakis to train the faithful.
yes, yeah, we've talked about that.
And that is exactly what Hawat is suggesting here. Take a group of Fremen and tell them that their planet had been a secret training ground to produce superior beings. God created Arrakis to train the faithful. Zach, did you say it's close?
But I don't feel like that would work with the Fremen, though. Am I wrong in thinking that? Like they would
It's
be like,
already
no,
working.
If the Harkonnens tried to do it, it'd be like, no, you're Harkonnen scum. You're durable. That's not how we do things around here. Go die alone, please. Bye. You know?
Yeah, I would agree that the Harkonnens would have no chance to try this. It would take generations. But
Right.
the Bene Gesserit have already implanted something into the people, and we know a certain someone who knows how to work that thing. And what might happen if they can get involved here?
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
So the Baron starts to whisper, "Ah, such an idea." So Hawat says, "You begin to share my suspicions." So the Baron, eager to get started, says, "So where do we start?" Hawat asks another question. "Ah, yes. Where did House Carino originate? Where were there people? Were there people on Salusa Secundus before the Emperor put prisoners there? Such questions are not encouraged." And the Baron, something clicks. "Ah, Count Fenring." He says, "Hey, you getting this? At my nephew's birthday several years ago, the Count came as an official observer and wanted to conclude some business arrangements between the emperors and myself. I believe I can't tell how with that one. I believe he said something. I said something about making a prison planet of Arrakis, and Fenring Hawat interrupts it. What did you say exactly? Exactly. That was a long time ago. And why wasn't the conversation recorded? I need accurate information. The Baron's face darkened with anger. You're as bad as Piter. I don't like these. Piter is no longer with you, my lord. And whatever happened to Piter? Oh, poor Piter.
Poor Piter.
Too
Poor
close to
baby.
that tooth. So the Baron says, he became too familiar, too demanding of me.
Tooth. He became too familiar with the tooth.
He did. Oh gosh, could you imagine if Piter would have lived with his blue and blue eyes? If he got a crysknife and got in to a Fremen Sietch?
Yikes.
Boy, I just get like Joker vibes, like hardcore, for what he would do.
Yeah.
This now would not be fun. So, the Baron slowly composes his features and says, "Wait, we were talking about Count Fenring." And the Baron tries to recall where he was in the Great Hall, the Cone of Silence during this event 2 years ago. And Barrett tells Hawat, the Emperor always knows a certain amount of killing has always been an arm of business. I was, of course, referring to our force losses. And then I said something about considering another solution to the Arakeen problem. And I said the Emperor's prison plan inspired me to emulate him. You know, just to work and get spice, no big deal, nothing crazy. I don't know if he was thinking this far ahead, but how it snaps. Witch blood! What did Fenring say? And it's funny because he says witch blood, and he's like 100% referring to like Bene Gesserits. Like, oh, those witches, damn them.
Oh, you think?
old
I thought it
face-
was just like a an imperial cuss word, you know, like.
Well, I mean, who else has been called a witch?
The Bene Gesserit, Jessica, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just the ultimate. They're ultimate evil in the world, always behind the scenes. Oh, witch blood. I just love that. And then, so Howard asks, so what did Fenring say after that? And the Baron says, that's when he began questioning me about you.
Bum, bum,
Bum, bum,
bum.
bum. Howard sat back, closed his eyes, and he started doing some mentat calculations. What's going to happen next? Well, the thing is done. Nothing is innocent in the Emperor's eyes. They must have spies all over Arrakis. 2 years. Ah. What were your instructions to Raban? The Baron said his instructions to Raban was to... Do you remember what it was? What did he tell Raban back in the...
To teach Arrakis to fear them. That's what the next line says.
To squeeze.
Squeeze. Yes.
Squeeze everything out. Fear. Yeah, make the people fear them. So Howat presents 2 solutions now to their problem, right? His mentat brain has done the thing, done all the probabilities, and there's 2 things you could do. Number 1, kill all the natives. Just a big old genocide. Kill everybody off. But that would mean there would be no more workforce on Arrakis. Or the second option is you abandon Raban completely. Cut off all communications for the most part, send no more troops in, just let him squeeze now, because he has nothing more to, like, he isn't getting no more reinforcements at all.
Right.
So Howard suggests we do this, because if we don't, we need a plan to stop the Emperor from attacking us. Because Howard says, if you don't do either of these 2 options, the Emperor will rally the other great houses around him and wipe out the Harkonnens, because they've become a bigger threat to the Emperor's throne. Much like what he did to House Atreides with the Harkonnens.
Right.
But the Baron then says, but what about the spice? It always comes down to the spice, Evan. Always.
Yep.
So Howard suggests that the spice quotas remain the same, knowing that Raban, without reinforcements, and still need to meet the same spice quota, will only oppress the population more. And then, in order to keep the Baron's hands clean, while Raban creates the ideal environment, just like someplace like Salusa Secundus. The Baron could not keep the light tone of admiration out of his voice. Ah, Howat, you are a devious one. Now, how do we move into Arrakis and make use of what Raban prepares? So Howat continues to explain in his, oratory kind of way that the simplest thing to do would be to demand a higher spice quota. And when the beast Raban cannot meet that quota, the Baron can then remove the beast and correct the mess. Very simple. And this is where the Baron puts his own twist on it. The Baron says, this fits. I'm preparing another to take over Arrakis for me. Howat studies the fat, round, baby face across from him. Slowly, the weathered old soldier spy nodded his head. He figured it out. Fade Routha. That is the reason for the oppression now. You're very devious, Baron. Perhaps we can incorporate these 2 schemes, and Fade can do to Arrakis, or Fade can come to Arrakis as a savior, and win the populace, yes? The Baron smiled. But behind that smile, he couldn't help but ask himself, how does this plan fit into Howat's personal scheming? How does this benefit Howat?
Right.
What do you think so far?
I mean, other than like how it's trying to, how it's obviously trying to kill the Baron somehow, but also how it's trying to stay alive, and so he's kind of like passing on the scheme / tactic or whatever they were trying to do with the Atreides, maybe so he can survive long enough for the perfect time to kill the Baron. I don't know.
Well, who does Hawat think? Okay, we'll get to that. We'll just continue. So Hawat, seeing that he's dismissed, arose and left the room. As he walked, he could not put down the disturbing unknowns that cropped into every computation about Arrakis. Right? There's too many variables. And now there's this new religious leader that Gurney Halleck had hinted at from his hiding place among the smugglers. This Muad'Dib. So I just want to stop here and note that he knows that Gurney is alive and with the smugglers.
Right.
So that's like that's got to be a big plus. But all of a sudden there's this Muad'Dib that's on the scene. Perhaps I should not have told the Baron to let this religion flourish where it will, or even among the folk of Pan and Graben. But it's well known that repression makes religion flourish. He thought about Halleck's reports on Fremen battle tactics. The tactics smacked Halleck himself, and Idaho, and even of Hawat. So the battle tactics are starting to remind Halleck of his own battle tactics, and of Duncan's, and of Hawat's. Why is all of this happening?
Ooh, I'm surprised that they're not like making that computation. You know what I mean?
Right. He still hasn't put it together yet. So, but he asked the question, maybe Idaho survived. Maybe Idaho is now with the Fremen somehow. How does this work? But this was a futile question. He did not yet ask himself if it was possible if Paul had survived. He knew the Baron was convinced that all Atreides were dead. The Bene Gesserit witch had been his weapon. The Baron had admitted it himself. And that could mean end to all, even the woman's own son. What a poisonous hate she must have had for the Atreides, he thought. Something like the hate I hold for this Baron. Will my blow be as final and complete as hers? And thus ends chapter 29. We are now getting into the last little bit here.
Chapter 39. Caleb, give us some credit.
Okay, we've come a really long way. We're almost done.
40 chapters. We're at chapter 40. That's crazy.
Yes. Especially because there's not, I think there's like 48 chapters. So we're like less than 10 away.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we're starting to see all these little things happening. So yes. Jessica's still getting blamed for what's happening. It's yeah, that's that one thing that Howat's gotten wrong. That like he's gotten this bad information, right? Because you can control a mentat by giving them bad information. So Howat's been fed this bad information. So he can do some computations really well, and others that like he just doesn't know where it is. And the Baron even admitted that, oh yes, Jessica's the one that did all this. To only just feed that prejudice he had towards the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, but it's crazy that nobody has told him, or he hasn't figured out from anyone, or like no one's let slip that it was Yui the whole time. You know,
Right.
That's crazy.
Alan just posted on our live stream that says, I hope Jessica and Hawat meet again. That's going to be a spicy meeting.
Ooh, very spicy. Very spicy.
Ooh, maybe that will happen. We're about to find out.
Ooh.
So I think the big takeaway from this chapter is we're outlining Hawat's got a plan. The Baron has a plan. But there's somebody that's already doing the plan better. Much better. And so much more detail, and like who who is more poised to take over the fighting force of a Fremen than someone they believe is the voice of the outer world, the Messiah, Savior, who's going to take them to the next level? What more personal mystique could get them fighting than that? Plus, you have Paul, and Jessica now, who are now training these forces that were already killing Sardaukar 5-1, are now training them in the ways that got the Atreides to almost beat the Sardaukar. I think he can put all, and that's why this quote at the beginning is so good, right? So like, Hawat and the Baron want the universe to make sense. They put a plan together. Little do they know that the universe even is one step beyond. Paul Hadid is already there. Even the Bene Gesserit, they're trying to put together this breeding plan, but he came one generation too early.
Right.
They don't know. The universe is constantly just tipping more. As much as we want to try to figure it out, it's just tipping in that one direction.
Literally, I don't think it be like it is, but it do.
But it do. And that's it. Hope, I just want to give you a little sneak peek of the next chapter, just to get your hopes up here. The first word is Paul Muad'Dib remembered. So no more Giedi Prime chapters. We're going into Paul. And what's been happening these last few years.
Dude, this whole week, like, I've like wanted to keep reading. I want to know what happens to Paul. Like, and I'm like, no, you can't read. You got to read on Thursday. You gotta wait. And then I'm like, all right, it's finally time. It's like, it's my alarm goes off, time to read Dune. I open the thing and it's still another Harkonnen chapter. I was so mad. I cannot stress enough how mad I was.
We are only building up anticipation towards the climax of this great science fictional masterpiece called Dune by Frank Herbert. I just want to thank you for joining us so far on this journey. Hit us up on Twitter at Reading Dune. Email us your favorite moments so far at readingdune@gmail.com. Send us some audio, maybe some videos. Evan, we also have a Discord, isn't that right?
Yes. We'll put the link in.
We'll put the link in the description.
Start putting it in the description. Yeah.
In the description. Yeah. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If we get enough people, we might do book 2. So we're just saying that. And as always, please, my friends, stay spicy.
Stay spicy, everyone. Peace.